Got it.
I'm so glad you know. I'm so glad you know what you're doing.
Okay, so it's already muted. Right? Right.
Can you minimize the screen?
Minimize that, and we are. And being recorded in live stream. Okay, and so we are ready when we want.
So Rocky is,
He's running late, but he's on his way.
okay, all right.
It's up to you.
Well, only, no, you know what, because of the, yes. I want to make sure because of, especially with public comment, that he is here, well, and right, they have the benefit of him hearing as well.
Right.
So we'll give it another,
So Jay, why can't I see the toolbar? Here, do I need to maximize it?
What tool are you looking for? The one that's underneath?
Yeah, there it is. Ooh, everything's running behind. Okay. Okay, so we will call the meeting to order in a few minutes. I just want to let our live audience know.
yes, for anybody who's watching live, we are waiting for one more member of the committee, and either way, we're going to start at 5:10. So the old, you know, you can leave class after 10 minutes if you. We are live, and hopefully those on the other side of the screen can hear us. Welcome to the Children's Services Council. It is 5:10, and I am calling to order the meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee. And with that, Ms. Clay, would you be so kind as to take the roll?
Yes. Mr. Hannah, Commissioner Cummings,
Here.
Dr. Glenn, here, Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Clay. So we've got item 4 on the agenda is a time for public comment, and I think for the most part we're really here to discuss the millage rate and the proposed budget. So that would be what the public comment would be on. Before we get to that, of course, I would say I would like another finger pointing what I'm supposed to do next. Or just a slap up against the head, an approval of the.
I'll make a
agenda.
motion to
Thank
approve
you, Dr. Glenn. Thank you, Commissioner Cummings. I have a motion and a second. Without objection, show the agenda approved. Item 4 is time for public comment. And is there public comment, Ms. Glenn?
Yes, we do have public comment. Miss Emily Free.
Is it possible for me to wait until Rocky gets here?
The answer is yes, because I really do believe that I think we'll all benefit from
What I have to say.
the public's comment. Let me do this. Let's pause on the public comment and go to item 5. And I'm going to turn item 5 over to Ms. Green.
Let's do it. Okay, so item 5, thank you. Sure. Mr. Treasurer. So item 5 has to do with the council's ability to invest funds. And we had a presentation from FL Class to this Finance and Budget Committee. The committee definitely was in favor of us using FL Class because they were developed specifically for government entities and local government entities in Florida. And so while it says here that it's an action item, it really is not. So at our next council meeting, July 20th, General Counsel Rowe will bring a resolution just so that the council can ratify and approve staff moving forward with setting up the accounts with FL Class to be able to invest our funds.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the David Director a question? I guess I missed that presentation, but is it in the budget when we discuss the budget that will determine the amount to be invested, or is that something that the full council discusses?
I think we'll probably take recommendations. Any money that is not being spent can be invested. It is a checking account with a high interest yield on it, essentially what it is.
And we can't pull the dollars out at any time, so that it makes it very liquid. That was one thing I liked.
Oh, awesome.
And if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Treasurer, Councilmember Cummings, we also have the ability to set up as in the reserve policy, the 8% for contingency and the 2% for catastrophe. We can actually set those funds up independent of each other in FL Class so that it's right there. We know exactly what's in it at any moment.
Oh, awesome. Can I follow up with one question? We said with high interest, what percentage interest are we talking?
I think it obviously it changes daily, but the city of Tallahassee is who presented, and I want to say.
It's budget and finance. Hold on, I have the document here. Here we go. So annualized performance for this, so with an inception date of July 2015, year 1, it was like,
Well, yeah, that's.
oh no, December 22, it was 4.5%.
Yeah, but I think it's at I want to say it's at like 5.5 right now.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's significantly. Yeah,
That's for last year.
yes.
Thank you.
Like all other accounts, the interest rates keep going up. So we might as well take advantage of the taxpayer dollars.
So I do have a question though. At the last meeting, did we vote to take this forward or did we just?
We did.
We did, okay. I thought
But we still need to codify it
Right,
with a resolution.
All right. Very nice.
So here's what I want to be sensitive that the public comment is heard by all, and we may need to ask Mr. Hannah to go back and watch the tape. I'm trying to see if anyone would have objection to maybe taking a couple of things out of order. which I realize we approved the agenda, but how about we talk about the next meeting date? Do we have the next meeting date?
We don't have the next meeting date, only because we are going into council retreat in August.
Okay,
And that's just a chance for us to reset, make sure that this Monday is working for us. So we didn't set another meeting date to try to give the council a bit of a break in August. We don't need one for finance and budget, because we will be, after the July meeting, we will report to the property appraiser's office the tentative millage rate
right.
that the council approves, and then move through that trunk process.
So speaking of the tentative millage rate, has Mr. Hannah replied to your text?
He has not, his text said he would be here as soon as he could.
Okay.
He didn't say how long.
Go ahead.
Formal recommendation to move that.
Emily, do you mind?
No, I mean, I can't expect everybody to sit around. You may not be here for 30 minutes, so.
And here's the thing, if I'm gonna let you speak. And then essentially the way this is gonna roll is very much the way we did it last year, where we're gonna allow each one of the council members to sort of, I'm gonna give an overview of what each millage rate that we're proposing, which, by the way, any proposal can go anywhere from 0 to 0.59. That's what the taxpayer said or the voter said when. So then I'm going to give everybody on the committee an opportunity to talk about sort of where they feel. And I will leave some time at the end if you would like to comment again, or any member of the public would like to comment again. Yeah, so hopefully that will accommodate you. All right, so
just for the record, so you're going back to number 4.
So I am going back to item 4 on the agenda, which is general public comment.
Public comment.
Emily,
Emily Fred.
thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'm here for 2 messages to you today. The first is to recommend that you present to the full council the option of no tax increase. Right now, you have 3 options, and even though one of them is to keep the millage as it is still a tax increase. I recommend that you find out what the rollback rate is and present that as an option to the council. And that's for several reasons. One, the public simply cannot afford another tax increase. Number 2, I think y'all need to make some improvements on how you're spending the money. Right now, you're scattering money all over the place, and it's very unfocused and very untargeted. And I realize that the nonprofits are complaining, but everybody can't get a trophy. You have to award money to the best of the best, and you have to be more focused. Every organization that I'm aware of that is successful is very focused on their mission. They decide what they want to do, they put the resources behind it, and they find the expertise to do it. That's why Ford doesn't make shoes, and that's why Nike doesn't make cars. You just can't do everything. Last year, you funded 29 nonprofits for the summer program. Do you even know which of the top 5 produced the highest learning gains? I don't think you do. You just need to be more focused. And I know the public was promised that the money would be spent on evidence-based programs. I don't know how many of these are evidence-based, but I think the majority of them are not. There's a quote in the Tallahassee Democrat by Sika saying that the CSC is still finding its groove in allocating funds. My recommendation is not to take any more money from the public until you find your groove. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clay, are there any other public comments?
There's no more public comment.
Suki. Fellow committee members, here's what we've done, and Ms. Fritz will be pleased to hear. asked Ms. Green to bring forward several different millage rates. Included in that is what the rollback rate is. We wanted to raise the exact same amount of money that we raised this year. What would the millage rate be? And so we have that as an option. And are you pulling up on the screen? Okay, so we're gonna have several different options for consideration. And if you remember last year, we spent a lot of time sort of struggling over, really from the very beginning. Do we go with the full millage rate? Do we go with half of the full millage rate? You know, the 0.25, sort of between 0 and 0.5. And where we settled on 0.375 was essentially a compromise between where Mr. Hanna was at the time and where I was at the time. And really that kind of made everybody comfortable. We rolled into last year and difficult economic times for a lot of people. And I think members of the council were sensitive to that and decided to essentially stick with the same millage rate. It did generate additional dollars. So, I mean, whether you want to call it a tax increase or not, it doesn't matter. We raise more money. That has made it into our coffers. The same thing is true this year. And what I've done is not what Paul Mitchell wants. I want everybody to talk about what they personally want. But I thought, no, and this isn't, we can make a recommendation to the council as a whole. I really think that we should sort of bring to them what our way of looking at it was, more than we recommend this dollar amount, or pardon me, this millage rate amount. So with that, we've got up there for people with ridiculously strong eyes.
Yes.
What we should have up there is the millage rate where we do not generate any more money, which comes out to 0.34.
7.
Thank you very much. We also have 0.375. We have, I'm looking.
0.437.
Which is halfway between 0.375 and 0.5. Correct. So we have 4 options. We can give you any option between 0 and 0.5, because that's what the voters have allowed us to do. And with that, those are the numbers. Know that leaving the millage rate the same generates about 700,600 high change dollars more. So that gives you a starting place. But if you follow the chart, which I did have right in front of me, it will show you real quickly the difference. If you go just down fiscal year 2024, 0.375 will generate 8.2 million. 0.347 generates 7.6 million. 0.4375 generates 9.6 million. And the full millage rate, the max we could go is 0.5, and that generates just under 11 million. So with that, I'm going to let my fellow council members and committee members sort of talk about what their thoughts are in terms of where we are and what you would like. And I don't know which of my
Orange color.
orange these.
Mr. Hannah said he's 12 minutes away.
Very good. Okay.
It's coming.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to reconcile my handouts that I have
It's this
here.
one here.
Okay, that I can't see,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
It's the
This is the one.
green column.
I had these enlarged. Is this the same thing you emailed to us? It's still, some of the numbers are different.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. So we
I
added
had
the
it
rollback.
Yeah. So, hold on.
And Commissioner Cummings, the rollback rate is exactly where we are today. So it would be the same number. Dr. Blythe.
So I'm leaning towards keeping the millage rate right where it is at 0.375. And let me tell you why. So, I mean, I understand, I heard clearly all the comments that, they took their time to come and express their concerns. And I understand the economic stress on everything. It's hard on me too. I totally get it. We're exactly where they are. I just know that, we are in the process of focusing and knowing where we need to put our dollars. And I want to make sure we have the dollars to meet the needs of our community. And I do think that we can do it with keeping it where we are. I would like to see us go to the, and it's a, okay, I'm sorry, I'm struggling. It's at 10 point what? So that does give us a little bit more dollars to fund some of those programs where we really see where there are gaps that we need to do. And so that's where I'm leaning. Rolling back. I don't want to roll back. I am concerned. I was very concerned when there was the possibility that the millage rates may have been frozen when, and I don't remember who that was, Sika, when there was conversation about freezing the millage rates right where they were in the legislation. That worried me because I thought our flexibility, once we get our groove and we know exactly where we're seeing a lot of those problems, if that had passed, our hands would have been tied. And there may have been needs that we just did not have the resources to meet. So let's keep it where it is. We're not, increasing the rate. It gives us a little bit more dollars so that we can really, really look hard at where those gaps are and meet the needs of the children in our community. So that's where I lie right now. I don't want to roll back, and I would have to be convinced to go forward. So that's where I'm landing at this moment.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Commissioner Cummings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm looking at it from a more global standpoint, recognizing that the county is raising ad valorem emergency services, not overall county ad valorem. And also recognizing that the city has voted to increase ad valorem, on property taxes. So we, the taxpayers, we're getting it, from different sources, even though what the county is raising for emergency services amounts to less than $4 a month. Whether you're in category 1 or category 2, but any tax increase, I think it affects all of us. So I'm very sensitive to that, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that we voted for this tax to help our children. And I want to see us be successful in doing that. And I don't believe we can be as successful as we envision if we roll back the taxes. I believe that our projections, and I've looked at the budget and what have you, I don't know who would suffer more if we roll back the taxes, our overall program. Clearly our children would, but we have some good programs that we are rolling out. I believe it's going to make a difference. We're going to move the needle positively for our children. And I don't want to roll back. Now we're getting a little bit more money because of the valuation of our homes. And we know the price of homes is skyrocketing. However, that's a benefit in a city for a taxing agency here in Leon County. So we will see, as Mr. Chair pointed out, we will get an increase in funding without increasing the millage rate. And I believe we can utilize that to benefit our children in a positive manner. So I'm not in favor of increasing the millage rate. I think it's just a bad time to do that economically for the entire community. But I believe that if we keep it status quo, utilize the increase that we will experience because of the increase in the value, of our homes. That's a benefit to the children,
So just to be clear, you're wanting to keep it at the same millage rate?
absolutely.
Okay, and I think we're on the same page, because
Yeah.
that's what I agreed to do, that's what I thought we should do, all right, I just wanted to make sure.
And even though we will
Getting more
getting
dollars.
more dollars, I don't look at it as increasing the taxes. You know, I really don't.
So I'm gonna, before I talk about the millage rate, I want to talk about kind of what I think are the most significant issues. One is the issue of the pot of money that we've been entrusted with. And I am sensitive to, just, what Ms. Fritz, I admire her for showing up, and I think you make us better, Emily, I really do. And your participation on that one evaluation committee made us better. We have miles to go before we sleep, and I accept that. And the first year of summer funding, we all sort of accept the fact that we wanted to do something because in our hearts, not always, there's this disconnect sometimes between brain and heart, but we wanted to make a difference in children's lives for the summer. And whether or not it was evidence-based and whether or not it directly impacted their overall learning during that first summer was less important, which is why I voted for it, to me, than it was providing services to kids and getting them all started. You had to start somewhere. So it wasn't our finest moment, but I'm proud of it nonetheless. The issue of that pot of money and the millage rate, if we left the millage rate the same, the reason that we generate more money is because when someone sells their house and it's being assessed at, let's say, 200,000, but someone buys that house for 300,000, that's the new assessment. So the person who's in the house, if they don't sell it, it's unlikely that the property appraiser would come in and dramatically increase the rate. So this has a lot to do with turnover in real estate. It also has to do with new homes. And so leaving it the same at 0.375 does generate more money, but the actual increase to any homeowner who stays in their home from 1 year to the next is either zero or rather insignificant. Now, I say that, which would make you believe that I'm going to say I'm 4.375, and I'm not. But I know the will of this council. But here is the reason I want to I want to encourage you to think about the 0.34, whatever it is we have any household needs to live within their budget. And we have done that. And we have money in reserve, like any good responsible family will do. And to Ms. Green's credit and the staff at the CSC, whether it was publicly or privately, I lit my hair on fire on how we were spending money. Like I know everyone in this county wants to do better for our kids, no doubt in my mind. And I know everyone in this room, every person who's part of this staff wants the community to hold them accountable for the way they're spending money. And I really believe that we have made such great strides, whether we're in our, what's the word you use, jive or groove. I knew there was a B. Or not. I think we are finding our groove. We have found our groove as an organization. And I remember in year one, I was a proponent for 0.25. And I said in year one, I'm a proponent for 0.25, and I can't wait to vote. The fiscal conservative, and I am, forget about how I registered to vote. I am a rabid conservative when it comes to dollars. I'm a rabid conservative when it comes to other people's dollars. Mine, not so good, but someone else entrusts me with their dollars. I'm a hawk. But I said, I can't wait to the year I'm voting for 0.5 because I know there's need in this community. So Commissioner Cummings, Dr. Bland, I know where your head is and I know where your heart is. And I can't fault you for it. And I know you don't fault me for my position. But the reason I would, if this were a secret ballot, I would vote on the 0.34, whatever that number is, the rollback rate, is because we have extra money that we are rolling over. We have lived within our means, and I think we can show this community that we can live within them one more year. And as we are getting our groove in programmatically, not just administratively, but programmatically, we can say to them with a straight face, we're gonna live within this budget again until we really are fully in our groove programmatically. And that's the reason I am where I am. I want to open this up to both of you again as well. Something that Ms. Fred said, and I take it to heart, and I agree with her. When I was a little boy, I would go to a carnival. My parents would say, "Here's X amount of money. You go on as many rides as you want. You can buy as many little trinkets as you want." And I remember the first year doing it, and I felt like I was getting more if I had, more plastic rings and more quantity, right? And my older sister, who doesn't watch this, but I wish she would, because it's one of the rare times that I will say you were right. She would come away with one thing, and I'm like, you lost. But my sister Kim would have that, that one toy much longer than I would my plastic rings. And I thought about, Emily's comments and I don't know if it's the last meeting or the meeting before, but talking about targeting and staying focused. So regardless of how we vote, I agree with them. I think we should. It isn't that all of these programs aren't meaningful and have good people with the best of intentions behind it, but I would rather put more money in fewer projects and in fewer programs and see if we really can move the needle, and not like instinctively feel like we're moving the needle, but really it's a bang, And by the way, if after we dedicate those resources, we don't feel the bang, we probably need to
Change
move.
the money.
Yeah. So anyhow.
I'd like to comment. So I completely hear you. I do. And for the record, I don't think we're funding a lot of plastic rings, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think we're trying to figure out which of these are the most impactful. And we're trying to get a good feel for that right now. What makes me want to stay with where we are, because I do know we'll get a little bit more dollars. I was heartbroken at our last meeting with that Boys Town decision, and I thought the reason why I didn't want to push for it is because I just didn't feel right pulling at $800 from any place else to fund that. I thought that was wrong because at that moment I felt we were living outside of our means. Whereas I think if we stay where we are, we get a little bit more dollars, we can fund programs that we see value in that we don't have to walk away from, which would have made me feel better about the impact that that program would have had. I just felt like we did a disservice to them at that moment. So that's part of the reason. But I do agree that I think we should stay more focused. And I think that the retreat is going to help us with that. And I think we've gotten better. You know, when we first started, honestly, with that first summer, we had no idea. We were just like, you know, Commissioner Cummings is like, let's fund these children, let's fund these programs, let's get the money on the street. That's exactly what we did. And we did the best that we could at that moment to start some programs. But since then, we have come up with 7 priority areas, and we're even going to narrow that down to the priority of the priority areas and really focus and go back and look at the needs assessment and see what those gaps are. So we're in the process of focusing. We just can't do it overnight. I mean, it's a big machine and we're trying to get there. But I do think we're on that path to where are the biggest holes? What are the biggest gaps? How can we close these in an effective way? What's the data that shows that we are having an impact? And I'm big on that. You know, I want to know that if we spend $5, we've gotten $10. And if we don't get $10 back, I'm not giving you another $5. I'm not, you know? So we're just now getting to the point where we can do that. And it took time for us to get there. But I feel as if we're getting there. And what I don't want, and Paul, you and I talked about this before, I don't want us to get in the situation where we need the money, we see the value in having it, but we don't have it because we rolled back. So I much rather have it there, and that's just the way I live. I much rather, we were talking about having a cushion, me and Mr. Grayson, right before this meeting started. I want to know that that's there, so if we see the need for it, we have the dollars to spend it. Do you want to say anything, Mr. Commissioner?
Well, no, I pretty much, I appreciate Mr. Mitchell's analysis, and it really has me thinking. But my big concern is, I believe that we are in our groove. You know, it's taken us a while. We're a new council. This is a new concept for Leon County. And I believe with the procurements that we have out there, we're looking forward to services for the summer and the fall. I believe that we are there, and I'm concerned about any type rollback that will derail us from moving forward in the progress that we believe that we will make with our children at the level that, we are. And I appreciate your explanation about the property owners and where we actually realize the extra tax funding. Okay, so the impact is not necessarily on homeowners right now. It won't necessarily adversely affect me, but you're correct. The new subdivisions, the people that are selling their homes, buying their homes, that's where we get those extra dollars from. And so from property owners' standpoint, I don't believe rolling back to 0.3477 would have a positive impact on those of us that are in our homes, been in our homes 30 years, 10 years, what have you. I don't think it would affect any of us that own our homes now. It just wouldn't from a dollar standpoint. So I believe maintaining where we are, not increasing the millage rate, would have a better benefit if you're weighing, if you're on a scale and you're equalizing that scale. I think it would be more impactful for our children for us to maintain, as opposed to reducing that rate and not really positively affecting those of us who pay property taxes anyway.
Mr. Superintendent, what we're doing, you're good. What we're doing is we are, I asked Ms. Green to bring forward what the revenue generated from collecting 0.5 mil, 0.4375, 0.375, and 0.3477, somewhere close to that, which would be essentially raising the exact amount of money that we raised this year. What would the millage rate be? It's 0.3477. And then, and if you follow this green thing, you'll see what the total revenue generated, and you can do the quick math as to what the difference would be dollar amount wise. I then asked Dr. Glenn and Commissioner Cummings to sort of comment on where they were in terms of just what's their feeling. Both Dr. Glenn and Commissioner Cummings articulated, I think, very sound arguments for leaving the millage rate exactly as it was, and that's 0.375, which will generate a little more than $600,000 for the council. My position was, despite voting for the same millage rate last year as the first year, rolling it back to 0.3477, which would generate the same amount of money. And then that puts you right there in the, and essentially, unless anybody from the committee thinks differently, I don't think that we should bring forward a recommendation, although we have at least two of 0.375. So it's, but I do want the full council to consider all of the millage rates. And by the way, they can go as low as 0 and as high as 0.5. And what I'll do is sort of open that part of the discussion with where each of us was, and then let you kind of chime in for yourself. So
first, I apologize for being late. Catching up after being off a few days after the 4th of July. I had an agenda review today and a board meeting tomorrow and my administrative summit. It's a lot on a Monday, but excuse, and I'm sorry. I think we had this conversation last year, similar conversation, and there was talk about inflation and what it was doing and potentially rolling it back to reduce the millage rate to raise the same amount of money because of the increased value. I was against it then. I would probably side with, not probably, I would like to side with Commissioner Cummings and Ms. Glenn on leaving it at 0.375. That way we're not each year adjusting it up and down. Hopefully we'll get to the year that we are just on full throttle. I think to your point, we're not quite there yet. And I think it's fair, although we will be generating an additional $600,000 by leaving it the same because of increased value. I would vote in favor of sticking where it is.
I think what I'm going to do is, again, I mean, unless you guys wanted to, it would be a 3-1 vote. I'm going to make sure that the full council, which really just another 4 people at this point, know what the sentiment was and give them an opportunity to weigh in. And, with that, we had asked for public comment prior to you getting to it. Emily Fritz made a comment about leaving it essentially at generating the same amount of money, and also asking that we begin to focus a little more on programs that worked. But I also want to, at this point, which is a little out of the usual, but I think this is that important an issue. So with my fellow committee members' permission, I'd like to open it up for public comment one more time. And
No, I'm fine with that. I apologize that I missed it the first time. I've heard, Fred speak before. By all means.
Ms. Clay, we have folks who would like to speak from the public.
Yes, we have public comment from Ms. Marion Lindley.
Very nice, Ms. Lindley. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. First of all, I thank you all. I know it's a really tough job. I felt like I was hearing a little bit of voodoo economics, because I'm pretty sure that if you keep the millage where it is, all property owners will see somewhat of an increase, not just people who buy it. So if our property appraisals go up,
Oh, yes.
which they often do, even if they don't. But having said that, So if you keep it where it is now, you're gonna raise about $600,000. That's not very much for the county commission to have $600,000 increase. It's a huge jump for you. You have an roughly $8 million budget. And that's a really big increase. I have heard what you said, the city's raising its millage, the county's in effect having a tax increase by staying the same. This will be a tax increase if you keep it the same. Truthfully, folks, your track record is not that great yet. I don't think you have the public. That's really what you're doing. Ms. Green said this morning, you're still trying to find your groove. If I had been your editor, I would have said, honey, you do not want to say you're still trying to find your groove because I think that said a lot. And you've said we're still trying to get our footing. I think the public feels you don't know exactly what's going on. You don't have any evidence really at this point to show what's successful. I suspect there are successes out there. I have not heard of any. I don't, and I'm not saying I need to hear them all, but I think there somehow needs to be a really solid declaration of what's changing and what's happening. Respectfully, I think it is great. You got the money out on the streets. You didn't want to diddle around, too long, just trying to get organized and get your groove and get your bearings. But really, I think you've got a long way to go to get the public's confidence. And with these other tax increases, insurance rates for property are soaring right now. I just don't really think you have this saleability. If you stick with the rollback at 3.347, you can still function very soundly. You were saying if people come up, they want something and you don't have money. Remember, you do this every year. So it's, people come to you in December and say, we need something right away. You can say, well, 6 months, we're going to be doing this again. So it's not like you'll never have an opportunity. And I just would urge you to do the rollback and stick with the 0.3.47 and keep up the good work. I do thank you for serious consideration.
Thank you.
Public comment from Ms. Emily Prince.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, some of you are going to hear repetition since Rocky wasn't here the first time, but I definitely agree with Marianne and going with the rollback rate. But if you go back and look, you must not look at your property tax bills as closely as I did, because my property taxes have gone up every single year, even when the millage rate doesn't go up. And I've been in my house 23 years. So yes, your property rates go up even at the existing millage. So I do support the millage, the rollback rate. The other comment I want to make, and again, I'm sorry for repetition, is to be more focused. I'm going to look at Rocky since he didn't hear me the first time. Money scattered all over the place, very unfocused. You're having a hard time finding quality providers for some of the programs you want to fund. No one wants to say that, but it is true. And you saw that at the last meeting. You're having a hard time finding providers. As I said to you guys earlier, all successful organizations are focused. They find what they want to be good at and they put their resources there. That's why Nike doesn't make cars, and that's why Ford doesn't make shoes. And I don't see this committee doing that. 7 priorities is a lot. I mean, if I asked the president of IBM what his priorities were, I doubt if he would give me 7. And right now the public is not happy. They don't see any results. And I realize it takes some time, but to raise taxes when people are already being hit by the city and county, I'd say go with the rollback rate. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody?
Can I comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Please, I'm sorry. I did want to comment. Thank you so much for your comments, Ms. Prince. Yes, we did start with 7, but as I mentioned, we are narrowing that down even further. So I do want to let you all be aware of that. And then the only other comment that I wanted to let you know, even with our priority areas, what I think you're looking strictly at the summer programming.
No.
Okay, all right, because I thought that's what you're looking at.
No,
Because with the
that's all.
summer programming, it's a lot of different programs that are focusing on summer programs, and there's a lot of different things, but that's just for the summer. We're really looking now at family supports. We're looking at early learning. So those are still in the process of coming out on the street and getting funded. Those are the more targeted areas, and that is coming forward. So as we continue to do work, you'll see a lot more work in those specific focused areas. But I just wanted to make sure you weren't pulling your finger strictly on the summer funding, because that's a lot of different programs, but the area of focus for those were summer programs for kids.
I made a public records request to Dina and she sent me everything.
Okay.
So I wasn't talking about just summer funding, but thank you. I appreciate it.
So, one thing I just want to talk about, and Dr. Glenn, you brought up Boys Town, and it really, I can't tell you how I struggled with that issue when I looked at the number of kids we were serving. And I, was respectful of the committee process and the evaluation team. But I also understood that the evaluation team was basing their decision-making on dollar amounts. And I'm like, no, forget the dollar amount. Just tell us which ones are the best programs, because let us make the hard choice of where to cut make that cut. Because if, the round one where everybody voted on what they thought was the best program, the Boys Town, I use it as an example. I'm not an advocate for one program over the other, but it finished number 2, but it fell out of the money because they submitted one bid. There was one program, I can't remember which, submitted 3 different bids, each for about $500,000 apiece, and 2 of them got funded. But so I think that if there's gonna be some times where we're required to make a really hard decision, it's just it's a great program, but no, I wish that we were all a little more involved in that decision making. And yes, the evaluation committee makes good recommendations, but in the end, and I can't remember where I read it, the statute either appoints us, by virtue of being a county commissioner or superintendent, or the governor appoints us. And we're the Children's Services Council, and we have to make those decisions. And I think we have the ability to make those decisions. And they're hard decisions. You don't want to ever tell somebody no. I'd like to say yes to everyone, but we don't have the money. And Ms. Lindley, to your point, 600,000 is a lot of money. And it isn't lost on me at all. And I know it's not lost on my fellow council members. I share your position, but I also I'm respectful of how each one of us gets to the conclusion that we get to. And I hope that the 4 of us now have the benefit of hearing your comments as well as each other's, and we can digest it a little. And the wonderful thing is, sometimes we change our minds, sometimes we don't. But you both made really very good points, and I thank you for coming and making points and holding us accountable. I think we all feel the pressure, and it's good pressure.
Pressure. Mr. Chair, can I just comment?
Absolutely.
I've got some concerns and some misfeelings about, I guess, our allocations and how the evaluation committees tend to, I guess, have a little bit more recommendation power. I mean, some of well, like you pointed out, we're the Children's Services Council. And I appreciate all the evaluators, their volunteering, their time. But I think some of the decision making as far as service providers, I think a lot more of that decision making needs to be on the council and not on the evaluators. And I'm looking forward to the retreat that we're going to have, because I feel like we need to establish some more specific policies. I've got some concerns with the evaluation committee making their own rubrics as far as evaluation criteria and allocation of points. I'm thinking that's something that we as the council should establish, you know. So I'm not comfortable with us relegating the authority that we have been accorded pursuant to the statute to the evaluation committee. So I'm hoping, Madam Executive Director, that this will be on our agenda for the retreat. Commissioner Lindley and Ms. Fritz have raised some points. They have raised some issues, and you, Mr. Chair, you've raised some issues that's making me think, well, maybe you might need to roll it back. However, I don't want to derail what we are doing. And I clearly don't want to disadvantage our children, who the taxpayers voted. Taxpayers recognized that we needed to do something specific for our children because they're falling behind in many categories. So I believe at our retreat, we can be more succinct about what specific areas out of those 7 that we are concentrating on. And of course, we derived those from the needs assessment that was done. We had a very thorough needs assessment that looked at the children in our area, looked at their deficiencies. And that's what's driving the Children's Services Council. So I think it's room for improvement. It's clearly room for improvement. I believe if we've made mistakes, they're honest mistakes that I believe that are designed to benefit our children. And while I'm thinking that perhaps maybe we might need to roll it back, the taxpayers, and we're all taxpayers are being taxed, it's high inflation rate. But then on the other hand, to me, the children sort of outweigh that. But I just want to give credit to all of you guys because you made some very, very good points, and especially Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, thank you so much. And I'm gonna take a little more time to kind of delve into that, the council making those decisions. Going back a year, maybe a little more than a year, I had made the suggestion that one of us sit on each one of the evaluation. And we decided that wasn't a good idea. In a weird sort of way, that's why exactly where we are today. Like, if someone, if Ms. Lindley or Ms. Fritz were to say to me, tell me about these programs that you funded. I can tell you about the ones that came and did their presentation, their 5-minute presentation. And I can tell you about the music programs, there was a STEM wine, right? Oh my gosh. And I go back to that. So I really believe, and I heard this at the last council meeting, I think we learned, and that is part of getting our groove. Ms. Lindley, your time as a newspaper person, I got to defend my executive director here. We are getting our groove, but we found a good portion of it, and there's only one way that you learn, and that is by keep trying. And I am, like I said, I am still comfortable with my vote in support of those first summer programs because it did teach me the need that if I'm going to offer up my name to sit on this council, then darn it, I have the responsibility to learn how I'm spending my neighbor's money. So I appreciate, Commissioner, your comments. Yes, Dr. Clay.
I completely agree with you, because what frustrated me during the last meeting, when having to make the decision, the part that I was actually involved with, is having to come to a decision. I wasn't deciding based on what the services were. And I think that's what we should be making those final decisions on, because what I would like to know is, like you said, it doesn't matter, the money is secondary to me, but what services are being provided that are closing a gap? And at that moment, I didn't know, and so the only thing that I could look at were the dollar numbers. And to me, at that point, I don't really care how much, is this closing a gap? And so one thing that I did ask, and I talked to the staff about, when we do these moving forward, we can't make decisions based solely on dollars. And I agree with Commissioner Cummings that I do think that they can evaluate them and then just leave it to us. Like, based on what you want to put this in the RFP, we felt as if these programs met, those, but we need succinct understanding of what those programs are and what gaps those programs are filling. And if we don't know what gaps they're filling, we can't make a sound decision. And so I have asked that we relook at that, how those are evaluated and what information we receive prior to voting, because I want to vote knowing that, we have A through C covered, the D through G is a big hole, and this program is going to close that gap. Even though they may be asking for $100,000, this other program may only be asking for $20,000, but they may be doing something that we don't truly need services for. So I do think we can.
And I just
Please, yes.
jump in. So number one, I do want to clarify about the rubric, because the rubric is not created by the evaluators. The rubric is created by the team in the RFP, RFA, or ITN, with the scores for each, whether you're fair, poor, excellent, outstanding, and with some direction on why you would score them. So excellent might be, but it clearly is stated this, that, and the other. And so we do guide them with the rubric that is presented. God, I sound like
You
a
mean
frog.
council up, council.
Yes, and you all approve
I thought I
that.
read someplace that the evaluators did their own.
No, well, then they do it after their first round.
Oh, I see.
Right, so in the different, the council has said that we would do program procurements using various types of procurement processes. So when you're doing the ITN in statute says that you've got an evaluation team and a negotiation team. When you're doing an RFP, the evaluators are charged with giving some sort of priority. When you're doing the RFA, we're presenting you with the scores and then you guys make the decision. That being said, I am so looking forward to the retreat because we'll have a chance to talk about, we've been doing it. We've done 2 cycles, now 3. Now you get to talk about what other information you want. And I totally agree with you as far as giving you not only scores and money, but the services that they're going to provide. But to that point, when we're issuing that procurement, it is addressing a gap. So we're not issuing, can't think of an example right now. So if there is enough childcare,
Right.
we're not gonna issue.
Right.
No,
an
I
RFP,
understand,
an
but what
RFP.
was not clear to me is if option A, B, C, and D, like the different responses, right, the programs, are all of the programs addressing the same thing? Or are we spreading those dollars over different areas?
And they could be addressing the same thing in a different way.
In a different way, which is fine.
Understanding that. So when I say we're getting our groove, because I beg to differ with you as well, we are getting our groove. We have been in existence for 2 term cycles, and this council has worked hard the first summer to get some programming out there. Came out of COVID, Commissioner Cummings was clear, Mitchell, always talked, I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, always talked about how he
Listen,
jumped on board.
Upgrade.
And we were able to provide 34,000 services. Now, some of them were duplicative with families, but those were families that needed these services. The next summer, we narrowed it, trying to do with summer learning. Again, second time. We learned, and we learned this time. And you guys are gonna be real shocked when I recommend what we need to do this coming summer, but I'm gonna save that for the retreat. Because it's gonna narrow the number of programs that are funded, and it's going to really get to those metrics. And now with family support, we've got the strengthening programs and the mentoring programs that are addressing the gap in those services shown in the needs assessment. So I realize maybe if you were my editor, you would tell me, ooh, don't say that. But I do feel like we're getting our group. I feel like we are moving into a place where our operations are pretty stable. And that's why this budget, in my mind, I was excited to do it because we're not forming anything. We've got our full staff, all 5 of us. Our latest hire who had to go home because I wanted to introduce him. When I say I'm very excited about the experience that she's bringing when you talk about results and evaluations and program measures. So I get it. I know the public is concerned. I too am a taxpayer and I too look at my tax bill. But one thing I have always said, I don't mind paying a tax if I know the services are there. So I just simply ask, and I'm doing this on behalf of our chair and our treasurer and our vice chair and is absent. Give us that opportunity to get into that group, because grooving is not a bad thing. I love the group. One note, that's all I need. So I feel like we come to work every day trying to make you all proud of the work every day and be very good stewards of taxpayer money. It doesn't fall faint on it. And that's what I love about this treasurer is he constantly reminds us of that. And I know that it's going to make a difference, but it does take time. And I'm done. Thank you for that moment.
Thank you. And I gotta say, and this is true also of the public. So there's a lot of people that are down on government, down on, there are. And listen, government does things that they probably deserve to be down on. Here's the remarkable thing about this council and the public showing up, participating in the evaluation committees and commenting. It's such a, like, people picking up the phone and emailing, and letting us know how they feel. It affects us, and everybody's got this paddle. And we're sticking the paddle in the water at the same time. We are all trying to row in the same direction as best we can. And it isn't just the 10 of us that sit at this table, but I think we rely on the public and the public's comments. And shame on us if we just are constantly patting ourselves on the back. I've sat through too many boards where I'm sitting in your seat going, I think they're kidding. Are they not? Get a mirror, And I think we all have mirrors. And I mean this as a compliment to both of you for showing up tonight. And your voices are, or your position is shared by many in this community. I know that. The flip side is also true. But shame on us if we don't listen to it and react accordingly. So I appreciate you all coming and the things you had to share. Are there any other comments? Yeah. Yes, Ms. Clay, are there any more public comment?
Mary.
Okay, very nice.
I know.
Come on up.
I don't know if we were allowed a PS. I want you to know, I want this to succeed in every way. I really appreciate, I meant to say this earlier, I really appreciated your comments. You guys are in a way celebrity appointees, you on the council. And sometimes I look at the people on there and I think, do you really have time to get into roll up your sleeves and do this work? But I think it would really help the public to know that, yes, you all are really making the decisions. And I was kind of shocked to read something called volunteers or sending up the information. I know volunteers are wonderful, and I know most of you aren't getting paid to be on here either. So your volunteers have sense, but you're like, you're sort of the A-list volunteers. The job is yours to make these big decisions. I appreciated your explanation of how the evaluations work. But man, you gotta own these dollars and not just let those volunteers and the well-meaning, because there's never gonna be enough money for all the things that we in our hearts would like to see. So I just want you to succeed. And that's why I don't want you to get ahead of yourselves. I want you to look good before you start pulling out a whole lot of money. Spend it wisely, it's what you all said. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Linda. Okay. Sure. You're on my left and I have everybody on my right, so I feel.
I switched my place today.
Well, I just want to make sure that, Mr. Man, I'm not.
No, I'm good. Echo what Ms. Brett said. I've said this from the very beginning about us really now and focusing on big initiatives that are going to be very impactful as opposed to spreading ourselves those cities down. That is a concern of mine as well. $9 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you have if you have 9 cookies in a cookie jar and you have a lot of hands in there reaching to get it, people are going to come out with crumbs. And at the end of the day, I'd rather see us invest serious resources in 1 or 2 initiatives as opposed to trying to save the world with $9 million. So
The next item. So without objection, I'm going to not have a recommendation to bring forward. Okay, great. The next item is the draft budget, which is, did I jump? Am I getting a finger here? No. Oh, I just want to make sure I'm on the right. Every once in a while, I look down and I miss a number here. But essentially with the draft budget, and Zika can walk us through it, but here's essentially what we do is we start with a base, and the base now includes all of the funded positions, some of the contracted positions, or all of the funds that we have as a council have voted to give to Ms. Green to use her discretion. So we have full-time employees and contract employees that fall under Ms. Green's discretion. That is essentially the rent, that essentially makes up the base budget. In the past, we've had a needs assessment. So that there have been expenses that we incurred that we won't incur this year, some office furniture, things of that nature. So when I talk about a base budget, I really mean it is base. It's having a space to call home and employees to fill that space. The retreat is really where we're going to flesh out the budget, that we can take sort of the feedback that we get. One, we're going to know what the millage rate that we end up supporting, so we'll know how much we're going to collect. We'll focus, so we're gonna know essentially what sort of dollar amount are we going to put in these focused areas, and then it will be much easier to actually bring you a a hard budget. But what Ms. Green and Ms. Snyder put together will give you a flavor for what that budget's going to look like. It'll look a lot like this year, minus some of the office furniture. Okay. Do you want to walk us through anything?
Can I ask a question? I'm going to go back to something you said a minute ago. So we are not bringing forward a recommendation to the committee on a millage.
Right. What we're going to do is what we did last year, and that is essentially, I'll do a quick overview that that when we met, there were 3 people who supported a 0.375. One is supported a 0.34, I'll identify. But it gives each of us an opportunity to actually take what one another said, listen to what the public had to say, and not just the 2 that showed up. And it doesn't lock us in.
Okay.
And then each of the council members will be able to reflect. This is kind of like the evaluation committee. We, it isn't our job to vote for others.
It's the same thing we did last year.
Yeah, I get it.
All right, I'm sorry for going backwards.
No.
So, so first, I want to thank Dina for always working with us, and of course, our treasurer for looking this over and making sure. And lastly, our accountant, Mr. Grayson, who really walked me through some stuff. And so, Mr. Hannah, I am very proud to show you this budget, which is only fiscal year 23-24. Because and I have the other budget that I showed last month, but this one shows you the new revenue we anticipate depending on the millage rate. And then it shows carry forward as well. So in this budget, the prior year fund balance we're estimating will be about $1.8 million. And that takes into consideration funding that we will have expended this year for the programs that you approved last Monday or on the 26th. And takes all of that into consideration. So that is what that number is. Some of that is staffing and some of it goes into programming, which is why at the end, you're gonna see almost the 97% of the money will be spent in programming because you've got an overage that will go into staffing. Does that make sense? Okay. So here I've got the options for the millage rates, and so that you can see the various revenue. And so at 0.3477, we're looking at 7.6. And remember, this is at 95% collection. At 0.375, we're looking at 8.2, 0.4375, 9.6, and 0.5, 10.9. The second column, we estimated about a 2% interest rate, which is going to change according to the revenue. And so the blue would be our total income. So 9.6, 10.4, 11.8, 13.2. That would be our estimated revenue. So when we get to our expenses, our reserves is the first place, and our reserve policy says 10% aggregate. So each year we will look at those reserves to make sure that they are at that 10%, 2% and 8%. If it turns out reserves is more than 10%, we can transfer that money into programming. So the reserves are different depending on the revenue, as you can see there. Then when we go down to compensation, this is for our 5 full-time staff. Our compensation in total, benefits, payroll, retirement, comes to $637,158, and that is going to be across the board. So I'm not going to keep moving because our expenses are the same. I'm just going to stay with this first column, and I can actually make it a little bit bigger now. Okay. And at this point, I want to go here because I just want you to know that this was the staffing that you all approved, and that number is congruent. All right, so when we get to contract services, these are the contract services that you approved and the council approved, I think it was March or April. So we've got our accounting services, our general counsel services, and then the other contracting services are the 199. If you remember, you told me I could figure out how best to use that for community engagement, communications, whatever it is we need. And so that is that 294 that you approved. Then we've got our contracted services other. So we have the independent audit, and we're already we have a proposal that approves $20,000 for 22-23, the year we're in. And then our payroll processing, thanks to Dina, we negotiated that down, and so it's only $4,000. So 24 for other contracted services. Then this is Treasurer Mitchell's favorite part. The fees that we have to pay to even collect the taxes.
Madam Executive, before you
Yes.
go further,
Yes.
let me ask you, is Holly in here anywhere?
Yes, so Holly is in this 199.
The 199, okay.
Yes, Special Programs Manager is in the 199.
Okay.
So we get to our collection expense and it is gonna vary depending on which millage rate, but right now I'm just gonna stick under 0.3477. And then we have advertising fees for trim, we have to do 2,000. And then we pay $175 a year to be a special district. So there are those amounts that go across.
So
there.
why Ms. Green says that it's my favorite is that 152,784, if we roll back the rate, goes for the privilege of it being collected, which is already being collected. That's why I get frustrated. Somebody's got to pay it, I guess, and I just was like, $150,000? Where's the person?
So that's a tax collector. We take the tax collector.
Split between the property appraiser and the tax collector.
Anyhow, okay, there I feel better.
Okay.
I like to say it every
Year. And so our communications would be our cell phones. We have separate cell phones for public records. We text and email and do all of that there. Our internet and voice over IP, 3,000. And then our virtual platform is $760. So that's our Zoom account for those who can't use Teams and all that good stuff. Our dues and subscriptions, so we've got our FAC dues, and I was speaking with Chair Glenn earlier today. So for the public's purpose, FAC is the Florida Alliance on Children's Councils and Trusts. It is an umbrella organization that all of the CSCs are members of. They do our lobbying, they help us with best practices. You all can reach out to them, so it's our membership organization.
And I encourage you, by the way, for the $20,000, Michelle Watson is always available. I've never seen a name she, if she's on the other phone, you get a call right back. I have had more questions for Ms. Watson, and this is quite a challenge. She has made a smart man on the questions I posed.
I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I also want to point out that we have an annual meeting with FAC, and contained within our dues, it allows us, I think, to bring up to 7 or 8 team members. We have lunch, breakfast covered. We don't pay an extra registration fee. All we pay is our transportation there and our lodging. You'll be happy to know that this year it's in Orlando.
Yes, that's maybe I did here.
Yes. So UPHS, if you remember last year, we joined UPHS and any. I made an executive decision that we don't need to be a member of any. But UPHS absolutely, as human services organizations, are there. And then the Chamber of Commerce, me and Mr. Mitchell feel a little different about this, but I did put it in here, and I'd like for the council to consider if they see that as a benefit. I will tell you, I do, only because of the relationship that we are trying to develop with workforce and their influence on the Alice population, and really helping those working Alice people with their basic needs. And I'll point out when we're talking about the child tax credit and things of that nature. So I left it in there. And I hope that you get it.
Well, I'm sorry. No, Madam Executive Director, but the services that the chamber is doing and I guess doing analysis and what have you for the Alice population, they're gonna be doing that anyway, right?
Yeah.
But they don't make it available unless you remember.
No, it's really just to show that support for them. They have been very supportive of us. And that would be all 3, because I'm afraid if you pick one and you don't do the other 2.
Oh, so this is for
It's all 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have been very supportive of us. The larger chamber does have, so this does not include membership in the Florida Chamber. We're not gonna do that. the big Florida chamber. That's not
Mhm.
what this is. This is our local chamber.
Okay, the
Um,
two minority chambers
The two
and
minority chambers and the greater chamber.
greater chamber, okay.
So that's what this is. So under dues and subscriptions, we're at 22,200. Our information technology for computers, we have 5,000. We will be getting a refresh plan from our managed IT because we are working on laptops, and usually every 3 to 4 years, we'll need to refresh those. But this is just in case we have that a computer blows up and we need to purchase a new one. Our equipment rental, that's all the stuff you see here. I was just telling Chair Glenn that our meeting room is used by nonprofits, a lot. And so what John is gonna help us do is value that so that we can show the public what we are saving our nonprofit community and other community when it comes to meeting spaces, because there aren't many places they can go where they're not paying literally $1,000 to be in there a couple of hours. We don't charge them. Our website maintenance, and then our software, so that we can do all this cute stuff you see here. Our liability, D&O, all of our insurance, that also includes property insurance at 20,000. Next year, we need to bid that out again to make sure we're getting the best value, but right now, Brown & Brown is giving us a great value. Our occupancy, that's our rent. This is that second year that we have held in reserves per our lease. You'll see that furniture is just $500 in case we gotta buy a file cabinet, but our furniture is 100% guaranteed for the life of furniture. If it breaks, they replace it for free. We've already had to have one repaired that came in, repaired it and left, so very happy. Security here is for our monitoring, so we do have camera monitoring. Again, Mr. Mitchell will be glad to see that this has gone down. He has opinion about whether we should have paid for the installation, but we are safe in here, Mr. Mitchell.
That I appreciate.
Office supplies, just $1,200. That's kind of our, if we need stuff, Quinta is very good with keeping us within budget. Postage is there, printing and copying, that's for paper for our copier. And then we did add shredding because we do have confidential documents and we don't want them just going out with the trash. So we have shredding and recycling. Our travel, so that $5,000 is for not only our annual meeting with FAC, but there are learners to earners, which is K through workforce. UPHS has an annual conference that's here locally. And then there's also a prosperity conference. And if there's anything else, we follow our newly minted travel policy and get that all filled out and approved. Lodging is for appropriate lodging that goes with per diem per our travel policy. Transportation, as we travel, we're going to rent cars because that is how we're covered in insurance, which is why you'll get mileage toll very low. We shouldn't have a need to take cars. Awards and recognitions under miscellaneous. So when we have council members or any other recognition you all feel we need to have. And then CHC awareness. So as we are getting our groove, we have been asked many times to participate in various outreach activities. Won't have anything to give them, a pen, nothing. So that is what this awareness is about. Additionally, as we are implementing programs, and one of the things I'm going to suggest for when we do next summer, some of our councils, when they fund those programs for the children, they make sure that the children are wearing T-shirts with that CSC on the back so that everyone knows that they were a funder for that particular program. So I talked with Chair Glenn and she wanted to make sure that was enough. I think it's more than enough. I don't even think we'll come to that, but we do need to begin to have some things that we can put out in the community so that they know that we're funding and we can tell that good story. So that's what that is. So when you subtotal the expense, it's $2,058,715, which you'll see is 21. But when you look at the administrative expense, it's 1.1, which is 15, which is well under what we allow our nonprofits administrative expense. So we allow them up to 18. Of course, As revenue goes up, the percentage goes down. That's just math. So this is the part I'm most excited about, programming. Because that's the crux of what we do. I'm in an organization that says programming is the crux of what we do. So that's what we do. So you will see here, we've got family resource centers, family strengthening, and youth mentoring. Those are actually programs that we approved during this fiscal year. Family resource centers, because we're going to reprocure that money is going to move into next fiscal year, but it is from this fiscal year's money. So that's why you don't see anything in those columns. Same thing with family strengthening, same thing with youth mentoring. So when you go over to the explanation over here for family strengthening, we will expend 300,000 this year, which leaves that balance you saw. For youth mentoring, we will expend 200,000, which leaves the balance you saw. And then FRC, if funded, all of that money transfers over.
Stika, push pause for a second.
Yeah.
So that if anybody's watching this, or anyone in this room, when we talked about you at the very top of your budget, you showed a $1.2 million rollover from our current fiscal year to our new fiscal year. The reason it's so low, but you look at our checking account and it's so high, is because Sika is accounting for those 4 million and whatever the other number was, as though we spent it because we approved it to spend in this coming fiscal year. So that's why it doesn't show a big number of a rollover of 7.2 million, but rather only 1.2 million.
You got it. And that's because we've approved it and not expended it?
Yes.
Right, because it's been approved for expenditure.
For example, the Family Resource Center is a great example. We had allocated 4 million. Doesn't mean we have to spend 4 million, but we allocated for it. We're about to reprocure that on the expedited procurement that we voted on this the last meeting. But that 4 million, it didn't just go away. It's still put in the budget for that purpose. If we decide, you know what, the Family Resource Center, that 4 million then will show up in the budget.
Okay.
It's important that you don't see a bigger number than we have to spend, because we've essentially already spent it, because
It's like we wrote the check already.
right,
Just haven't
it
kept.
just haven't cashed.
Yeah.
Right.
See, that was gonna be my question. So the roll forward you show is 1.8
Yes,
instead of
7 point, okay, so if you go up here, I don't want to make you dizzy.
Right.
Let's go up here. So,
I'm sorry, 1.8. not 1.2.
so what's rolling over
I see it.
is the reserves. That's at 7.7, and then carried forward in operations. So when you add all that together and subtract it out, that's where you get the 1.8. That is figured into the budget.
And by the way, here's the other nice thing, as opposed to the state's appropriation process. If, for example, that $4 million isn't spent, or let's say that I forget what the high bidder was, but it was, or the highest score bidder was like 3.3 million. It would have left $700,000. Our budgeting process and our approval process would allow programs like the Early Learning Coalition to come forward, and we can vote right then to do it. We don't have to wait the whole year. So it's we are, again, it's not a bad thing to be kind of learning as we go along, but we put $4 million in a bucket for a particular function. If somebody comes in and says, I'll perform that function for 3.3 million, well, shame on us by not saying yes, do it. And take that 700,000, we can spend it in that current fiscal year. We don't have to wait for the new budget, as long as it goes through whatever process it needs to go through and the board votes on it.
And also to your, I'm sorry, also to your point, because now we're getting into a group of funding programs, so you will get a report ever so often so that you can see where we are financially. So let's say with the Family Resource Center, we get one, and to his point, it's 3.3 million. So that leaves 700,000 for something else.
Right.
We put that with all the little leftover funding and decide, you know what? We want to offer an opportunity for those entities that were not funded in a particular area to come back and submit. They can do that.
Will you please go back to the programming with all of the
Yes.
different colors?
Yeah.
So I understand why the $4,000 is white, I mean, the $4 million is white, because we haven't funded that, and that's gonna go to the next year. But we did fund for family strengthening and youth mentoring.
But we're only gonna spend 300,000 in this year.
Okay,
So if
okay,
you look
okay.
all the way to the
I see
end,
that here. Okay.
right, and so that's why it says 2.1 million there.
And that's what's remaining that we approved for, okay.
Right. And the same thing for youth mentoring, we're only gonna spend, not only, we're gonna spend 200,000 this year, which leaves 800,000.
Okay.
And these are round numbers. So, for example, under family strengthening, you all actually approved, instead of 2.4, you approved 2.2. But this was already done.
Right.
And so to try to go back in for just those hundreds of that, but we will get a fuller picture, which Mr. Mitchell said, once the millage rate is approved and we go through end of the year for carry forward.
And Dr. Glenn, remember at the last meeting, when we were talking about Boys Town, you looked at me and you said, well, do we have it?
Right.
And I said, yes, we do.
Right.
And the reason we have it is because we don't always spend in every category. So, but if you do spend it, then when you ask me that question the next time.
We won't have it.
The answer is no, we
That's
don't
not
have.
cushion.
Yes, I know what- listen,
That's fine.
you and I are on the same page on that.
All right.
So for next year, we'll have early learning funding at 745 too. That will include rebound and recovery and the early learning contract that we have currently with ELC. We'll have Summer Bridge. We just put in what you funded this year. This may not be what you approved, but we put in what you funded this year. Prenatal and postnatal at 1.2 million. Youth development programming at 25,000. That's for a CSC Leon Youth Team Board made up of children from the families that we serve. So those, no offense to the A students, but that's not your A students, your actively involved, your leadership Tallahassee Team Board. We are going to pull people who we service for that.
And can I just make a comment? Just so for those who are listening, who, who want to know where we're bucketing the dollars, I don't think they always see these buckets. So I just want to, we are really trying to put money in, and I'm having a hard time reading these things.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. But yes, summer break.
Did you print?
I'm trying not to my age.
I'm gonna print
I
it
appreciate it.
for the council.
Yeah, but
I'll print it.
we have dollars that we have allocated for prenatal, for youth development, for family, learning centers. So we are trying to focus our attention in these areas. So I just want everybody to understand, it's not a haphazard thing. We are looking at these areas, and then we do realize, wow, we are trying to do a lot. And then we're going to go back to these groups and figure out, okay, where do we really need to focus our attention? But it was methodical. I wanted the public to be aware of that. And I know we don't have public relations opportunity to, share that information, but I do want the public to be aware of that. Okay, absolutely.
Here's the good thing, Dr. Glenn.
Yeah.
Those members of the public who are concerned, they have an opportunity to tune in. And I will tell you, just the number of phone calls that I take, and I do my very best of explaining where we're going. Like I said, I am very proud of what we've done thus far. I don't think it's perfect, but there's nothing in my life I am more proud of my three boys than anything on the planet Earth, and oh, believe me, they're not perfect. Yeah.
Understand. Thank you. I just might be able to.
And so then the next would be our SIPS funding, of which we actually have an application out. Those that are out in the public, please look at that application. It closes on August 7th, 8th.
I'm sorry.
The SIPS closes on August.
For SIPS is going to
Yeah.
close on the 30th. Oh, I'm sorry, you extended it because we had the
Extended it,
holidays,
yeah.
so we went till the first Monday.
First Monday in August.
Yes.
And then we've got our 169, which is the second half of our agreement on capacity building and technical assistance for our organizations. This should excite you, Dr. Glenn. This is our money for our data system. That's the last piece of money we pay for our data system. And then this will excite you because this is our program measurement, evaluation, outcomes, all of that good stuff that we'll start with this summer and then move into family supports. And then this is for our outreach and community events. You guys remember we have an MOU with the county and the city for Trusted Voices. So this is that money that helps with any events that comes out of that. This is where it's most exciting, right here. These are new funds available for programs. And so with 0.3477, it's 3 million. Or 0.375, where we are, it's 3.7 million. Or 0.4375, 4.9 million. Or 0.5, 6.1. So you all get to take this and study it and figure out where you want to be. And you'll see when you look at the percentages, 97% of the money that comes in next year will be spent on programs. And so that gives us a balanced budget, which we're required to post. And so when you all approve your millage rate, and you will do that by roll call vote in July, then you will, your tentative millage rate, you will approve in July by roll call vote. Then once you approve that rate, I will present the corresponding budget. Tentative, you will approve that by roll call vote. And then our first trim hearing is September 14th, 6:05. Second and final trim hearing, September 28th, 5:15.
Ms. Mann has a question. I know one of the things that was raised last year when we were looking at the budget and I remember Ms. McFadden, she was talking about a grant writer. That,
It's in.
I think Ms. Fritz or whomever, is it in?
Yeah,
It's
under contract.
It's under
Oh, under
contract.
contract.
Same thing as Hunter.
That's where it is. Okay. So it just rolled in.
We put everything in one bucket and said,
She figures
It's
out.
up to her. Oh,
Yes,
yes,
how
all
she
right.
wants to do it. Yeah,
Okay,
so that grant writing will come under the contract staffing services.
okay.
If you all have any questions after this meeting, please do not
You
hesitate.
did a great job.
I'd be
Thank
more
you.
than happy to
Yeah.
walk you through it. In the public as well, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
okay, speaking of the public, I don't see anyone in the room, but sometimes, they appear. Ms. Clay, are there any members of the public who would like to comment?
There's no public comment.
Oh, that's great. So. Well, I think we have a recommendation of the budget, which is essentially what Sita just went through, minus the difference in the millage.
Right.
So what I would like to do is say, hey, is everybody comfortable with that budget she just presented? Once we vote on the millage, then it would just follow
Yeah,
accordingly.
absolutely.
Okay, so hearing a motion from Dr. Glenn that we approve or recommendation to the full council, the proposed budget that Ms. Green has brought forward, and a second from Commissioner Cummings, without objection, show that item approved.
It is approved.
Thank you. The next meeting date, we don't know. So
But the
for
next
those of
time-
you who are tuned in, it's July 20th is the full council meeting. Very good. At 4 p.m. That's right. We're here, right here in River City. Very nice. The next meeting agenda is going to be, we're going to take what the council recommends as the millage. We are going to put it together combined with the budget that was discussed. And we'll really have a good feel as to what we will have. Of course, we still have to go through the public hearings. So nothing is done until it's done, but at least we'll have a good flavor. So the next agenda will be kind of short. All right. I think all the committee members have made comments throughout the course of the evening, but now is as good a time if you have any additional comments.
So let me understand, in the budget that we just, it was $700,000 for early learning. Is that right?
Yes, but that doesn't have to be the final number.
And it doesn't prohibit any of that additional 3 million that we have. It's unencumbered from being.
And superintendent, that is really the emphasis of our retreat. Like where we are looking at each other and saying, come on, what do you want to do? Where are we going to put those dots?
Right. And what I also want to say, if I may, so we were having a discussion today, and I really want at our retreat to discuss early learning versus early childhood. Because I think that we're rolling those into one. And really, we should be thinking about them separately, because prenatal and postnatal, that is early childhood. That is getting at the issue before the child is born, periconception, all of periconception, preconception, that's the word, preconception. And so are there other programs we want to put in?
Is that the right word? I don't know. Sounds like a bottle of wine and candlelight.
Preconception, before conception. Prenatal care is before the child is conceived.
Correct.
Conceived?
No.
Well, no.
Prenatal
Not
is when the
prenatal.
child is conceived, but
Prenatal.
prenatal.
Well, only one thing that happens. A bottle of wine and a candlelight.
So let me say, we do need to think about preconception. And not only from the woman's point of view, but from the male's point of view. Because when you have two healthy individuals that get together, that is your best chance for a healthy conception. And then the prenatal is while the baby is in the womb. And so when we talk about early childhood, it encompasses all of that. So when you talk about birth to 3, we want to catch it right there. So yes, the long answer to your question is, I expect the council is going to look at that new money and see how we affect where you said your emphasis would be, that early childhood, because I probably shouldn't say this, but I think we're moving okay in those other areas. I think the early childhood, early learning is where we need to look at. We'll have more information on what was done in the early learning space. But every time I hear you talk, Councilmember Hannah, I think early childhood. What are we doing as that child, before that child is conceived, while that child is in the womb, and when that child comes out? So that
That's up for discussion. I mean,
but
that's.
I'm not making,
decision on that.
I am not making decisions.
Yeah.
Let me be clear.
My job. Good vote recording, yes.
Yeah, and even take those 7 and let's bring them down a little bit and roll some of those.
Okay. All right, I'm good.
Dr. Glenn, any comments?
No, thank you very much for leading this discussion, and thank you for the preparation of the budget. I thought it was very, very well done.
Commissioner Cummings, any comments before we adjourn?
No, other than to say, I think we had a great meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Madam Executive Director. I think you guys did a great job. I want to thank our accountant. So I know he had a lot of hand in this as well, but I'm excited about moving forward. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And I show that it is 6:55. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Let's go.
Travel anywhere before? My middle son was in Greece and Italy.